Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker recently released a plan that would legalize sports gambling in the state by allowing fans to bet on games at casinos or on their smartphones. If it moves ahead, Massachusetts wouldn't be alone. Several states are making moves to allow sports betting, given the U.S. Supreme Court decision last year that allowed the practice to go beyond Nevada. For a local perspective, I spoke with Ryan McCullum, a political consultant who's followed the issue, and Kevin McAllister, the chairman of Sports Management Department at Springfield College.
On the surface, this is actually a pretty good plan. I don't have a real concern with betting on professional sports. If you think about it, we've been betting on professional sports for quite some time. I'm actually happy to see that they're trying to keep it away from the collegiate sport. College athletes, low-level athletes are much more susceptible to the problems that we've seen over the years. Obviously, with the Boston College point shaving scandal in the late 80s, 70s. Those types of athletes are the ones that we have to be very concerned about in making sure that they don't come under the influences of organized crime, which is where most of the problems have come up. So if we keep it away from college sports, that's a great idea. Professional sports, we've been doing it forever,
yeah.
So let's keep doing it.
And on balance, this is the Governor Baker's proposal at this point would prohibit the gambling, like, as you say, on college and amateur sports. And gamblers would have to also be 21. There'd be a tax of 10% for in-person betting, 12.5% for online wagering. And the governor has also proposed that setting a 12.5% tax rate on daily fantasy sports, which is a huge industry. We have DraftKings right here in Boston, or in Massachusetts. Ryan, for you, what did you think when you heard the governor's proposal?
Well, it's a good step in the right direction, right? So the devil's in the details. There's already other bills in the House. There's a couple other bills in the Senate, and there will be another bill coming out of the House that Chairman Wagner's looking at. And so when they all get together and they iron out whether or not college should be in it, is $35 million all going to go to local aid, or should it go to other places? What should the tax rate be? 18 and over, maybe, instead of 21 and over. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure they're going to iron it out. We're talking about also, is it just casinos, or is it online, or could it be through the lottery, as we're going to talk about later. So we'll see what comes out of it. But it's a step in the right direction, seeming like we want to do something.
We saw Rhode Island enact its version of this as soon as the Supreme Judicial Court decision came down last year that made the sports betting more broadly available. Currently, we've only seen it in Nevada. Is this just a sense of the laws catching up with 21st century technology in a sense?
Actually, that's my concern. In 1961, they passed the Wire Act, and the Wire Act prevented bookies and basically the advertisement and promotion of gambling across any wire service. So the internet situation is kind of an interesting new piece to this. Obviously, in 61, they didn't have the internet. But certainly today, that has to be something they have to pay attention to. Back in 2006, the government prevented all internet gambling sites offshore, which is where a lot of our folks were starting to take part in some of this gambling. They shut that down. They prevented them from doing that. So it's obviously catching up with what's going on. As long as it stays within the states, I think we're going to see a much broader opportunity to gamble through the internet.
So are you saying you would be more comfortable if you had to walk in physically to a casino, an MGM or something like that to place your bet, as opposed to anywhere, any place on your phone?
Absolutely. And one of the biggest concerns from some of the research that's out there right now is the most susceptible folks to problem gambling are young adult males. And what are young adult males using more and more these days? Our cell phones, our mobile devices. And so there's no causality between online gambling and problem gambling at this point, but there is that concern that if you have that easy access, It's much harder to control for problem gamblers that addiction that comes with just throwing $5 in, $5 in, $5 in. You don't see it coming out of your pocket. It's right there coming off your credit card, and that's the big concern, is that will facilitate more problem gambling.
And Ryan, you have another perspective on this.
Yes.
You're working with an entity, it's small but mighty,
Yeah.
Fair Play Massachusetts,
Yep.
and you would like to see people be able to lay a bet right alongside Keno at any sort of lottery scratch ticket location?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how many places we would allow. But our first thought is places that have Keno and that are generally sports bars. And to the professor's point, when you have to dig into your pocket and put $25 on the Patriots, it's much different than being on your phone and just adding to your account. And that's where it can get really dangerous. And the legislature is going to have a hard time trying to write protections about that. And so it will also, the more safe and legal places you have to gamble, then you're going to cut into the black market. And so if one of the goals is to try to eliminate the black market, having more places like your local sports bar to gamble at makes sense, and it will also help the local economy.
But so what will be the advantage or the lure for someone who has currently been doing this as they have to come into a legal market that's going to be taxed and could cut into what they would see?
I'd say the legality of it. Right? So there's people who probably bet now a little bit here, a little bit there, but they don't necessarily like meeting up with their bookie to settle up at a local restaurant. If they're able to go into a place, whether it be a casino or a local sports bar, and legally bet, then it's going to cut into that.
So it sounds like I hear you guys saying it's going to happen. It's a matter of when. Thoughts on when that might be?
Well, we'll see. I mean, there's a 2-year legislative session, but as you see, there's kind of momentum building, and Connecticut has had a law ready to go. So Connecticut, as well as Rhode Island and New Hampshire, everybody's going to be doing this.
And
so
it seemed like at the end of the last legislative session, there was some will moving toward this, but legislators didn't really want to rush it toward the end of the session.
Yeah, you want to be deliberate, and you want to do it right, and you want to make sure you have public hearings and transparency. And so, maybe at the end of the year, maybe the beginning of next year, something could be done, but it's really hard to try to say when it's going to happen.